This is John for the Everyday Fan Sports. Today I have the pleasure of being on the beat with writer, reporter, author, and friend Bruce Miles. How are you, Bruce?
I'm doing great, John.
Bruce, let's jump right in. You're a longtime Chicago reporter, writer, and all that. You've been on the sports scene for a long time. Has that changed the way you actually enjoy watching a game?
I don't think it's changed anyway, and I enjoy watching the game. There's a lot more that's going on nowadays than when I first started writing. I first started writing professionally way back in 1979. And back then, of course, there was no internet, there were no social media, of course. So everything that you reported on, a lot of people maybe hadn't seen, or if they had, there were no hot takes then. They couldn't tweet you right away or email you right away. So that's, I think, the biggest change. It's the only thing that's changed, but it is a big thing.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you've covered the Cubs for a long stretch, including the first World Series in like the 100 years. How cool was that for you to be there covering it after such the long dry spell?
Yeah, that's one of those things where you just wanted the story to be over, even if you didn't have a rooting interest. And when you get to the park, you check your fandom at the door. But I just wanted that story to be over so that we weren't writing about 109 years and 110 years. It was really cool, though, to see that and to be there on that night in Cleveland that turned rainy for at least 17 minutes and then walk out of the stadium at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Now, aside from Wrigley Field, you've been to many ballparks. What would be your top two or three ballparks away from Wrigley?
I always enjoyed going to the new Pirates Park, PNC Park. And when I was started on the beat, they were playing an old Three River Stadium, one of the old cookie cutter parks. They moved into PNC, and what a difference. You could see downtown. You could see the Clementi Bridge. You could see the boats going by on the Allegheny River. Of course, I like a lot of the new parks compared to the old cookie cutters, but I also like Fenway Park. The Cubs played interleague there several times when I was on the beat. And totally different from Fenway is Dodger Stadium. Wasn't a big fan of LA, but I do like Dodger Stadium for the history, for the fact that you look out and you'd never know that you're just north of downtown LA because you see the trees and you see the mountains in the background when there's no smog. So those, I think, Pittsburgh, one of the newer parks, Fenway, a historic park, and Dodger Stadium, which is really now a historic park since it opened, 60 years ago.
And aside from the World Series, what would be like one or two underrated moments in your career that you will remember forever?
Well, I always say that my favorite regular season game that I ever covered was Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game. That's certainly not underrated, but it remains my favorite simply because it was my first year on the beat. So much was happening that year. And then this 20-year-old kid, not quite 21, comes and never had a complete game in the minor leagues, throws a complete game, 20 strikeout game, no walks, a shutout against the Astros in front of just over 15,000 fans on kind of a dreary, misty day at Wrigley Field. That one certainly, of all the other hundreds, I don't know if I could pick out one or two, but that one is the one that always stands out.
Well, that's certainly one that I'll remember. I wasn't there, but I was watching it, and yeah, that was an amazing day. So now you've got a book coming out, or it came out, the franchise, curated history of Chicago Cubs with Jesse Rogers. How did that come to be, like, and how did the two of you get together? Did you do that yourselves, or did the publisher put you guys together?
No, that book just came out. June 6th was the release date, and we've enjoyed a couple of book signings and some other virtual events and some interviews. But Jesse approached me in March of 22 about it, said he was working on a project and needed some help. So, and asked me if I wanted to jump in, told me what we were doing. It was we could write about any subject in Cubs history we wanted to write over several chapters. I ended up writing 9. Jesse did 4 or 5 chapters, and we could pick whatever we wanted. So it was, I was able to research things I had covered and research things that I was curious about that happened, before the time I was a writer.
Did you learn anything new, anything majorly new about the Cubs or the history while you were doing it?
Well, one of the fun chapters was on Gabby Hartnett. the catcher who hit the homer in the Gloman in 1938. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that was because I think it's one of the most important home runs, not only in Cubs history, but in baseball history. So I got to research that quite a bit. And there were writers in Chicago who thought Gabby was the greatest Cub in history, even more so than Ernie Banks. So that's one thing that I learned. But the sweet part of the chapter is I got to sit down with Gabby's granddaughter, Joanne Bebrock, who lives in the Chicago area. And she told me about Gabby as a man and a grandfather. Wow. And the fact that he stayed in the Chicago area, ran a bowling alley. And as a player, he would go out and do clinics for kids, even in bad weather when they thought maybe nobody would show up. So those couple of things stand out. Also, just how Sammy Sosa's legacy in Chicago is still very polarizing. Some people think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Some don't. Some think he should be welcomed back by the Cubs. I do, and I think there's an off-ramp that way. There's a Cubs Hall of Fame committee, which I am a member of. Elect Sammy to the Hall of Fame. Tom Ricketts can say I had nothing to do with it. Bring him back because he's a Cubs Hall of Famer. So those kind of things. Sammy Sosa, the history of Gabby Hartnett, and just so many other things that were just kind of, if not revelatory, but just fun to research.
And obviously there's a million Cubs books. So what makes your book, or your book with Jesse, what makes your book different? What makes it unique?
Well, I think from my standpoint, for me, it's part memoir. It's part of my own memories, my unique memories, and my own take on things, such as managers like Lou Piniella, Joe Madden, Dusty Baker, again, Kerry Wood, the third base search from Ron Santo to Aramis Ramirez. So I think that it gives our perspective on things that we had seen. Now, with the benefit of time and distance, I can go back and look and say, what was Dusty's tenure really like? Or, why did the Cubs have such a hard time getting a third baseman all those years? Or why is Kerry Wood remaining so popular, even though his career maybe didn't quite pan out the way it did? So I think what makes it different is you have two experienced reporters who saw a lot of things, talked to all these people, and then went back and talked to a lot of them again to get their viewpoints with the perspective of time.
So my natural next question would be, I know you and Jesse both have a long history of covering the team. Could there be a sequel to the book?
I would love for that to happen. The Cubs history kind of goes back far, 1876 or thereabouts, with the formation of the National League. There are infinite number of topics that you could explore. I'd like to look at the double play combination of Tinker, Evers, and Chance in the 19-aughts, when the Cubs were a dominant team under Frank Chance. Going back even further, Cap Anson and his controversial history. William Hulbert, who was instrumental in founding the National League and running the Cubs. Maybe something on the post-war Cubs and why they were so bad after World War II, and it took them 20 years to kind of recover from that. So, and I think with Jesse still on the beat, one of the topics he talked about but didn't get to was, why the 16 Cubs had to be broken up. I think that chapter is still being written by time because a lot of these guys are still playing. But yeah, there's an infinite amount of subjects we could still get into for a volume 2.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Cubs arrow right now, pointing up, pointing down, pointing level.
I think right now you'd have to say it's pointing level. It's an interesting division they're in, with the NL Central being as weak as it is. Now we're seeing the Cincinnati Reds starting to emerge a little bit. The Pirates got off to a good start before. They've cooled down lately, thanks in part to the Cubs. So I think the jury is still out on that one. We're still seeing what the Cubs are going to reap from the trades they made to get rid of some of these star players. So I'm not going to say up, because even though I'd like to be optimistic on behalf of Cub fans, I'm not going to say down, because the division seems to be there for the taking. So I'm just going to give it a flat cop out and say neutral.
Well, that's fair. It's an option. Sure. Listen, I can't let you go without discussing another mutual love that we both have, AU softball.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in AU softball, and what do you think of that unique scoring system?
Athletes Unlimited. It's a lot of fun. I started with them in 2020. I was a ground floor person, and my wife actually saw some sort of an ad or a notice online and said, you might be interested in this. I contacted them and they said, sure, we'd like to have some feature stories written. Your experience in this, would you like to write some features? So I started with that, writing softball features right away in 2020. I think my first two were Jasmine Jackson and Taylor McQuillan. And I've written about 25 to 30 more encompassing all of their sports, maybe except for basketball. I've done a lot on volleyball, some on lacrosse, but a lot on softball. But they play in Rosemont, both their regular season, their championship season, and their AUX games, which are going on now. I really like the scoring system, and I was skeptical at first. For people that don't know, players get individual points during the game, but wins still matter because you get additional points for winning the game. I thought it might undermine team play when I first started, and I think other people did, including the players.
Exactly.
But I think it's turned out to be pretty good. You see a lot of competitiveness on the field. The players compete hard. You see diving catches, you see plays at the plate, you see strikeout games, you see home runs. And what I kind of like the best is that after the game, everybody's friends again. The players have a lot of passion for the game, yet a lot of compassion for each other.
It's just an amazing time. I feel the same way about you. I was a little skeptical at first about the scoring system, but I'm not seeing players trying to stretch singles into doubles for the extra points. I'm just seeing great team play. And what a level of elite play is out there. It's just amazing.
What amazes me is how many players who played in the Olympic Games, over a couple of Olympiads we have, and from several countries, the United States, Mexico, Canada, and Italy. I've done feature stories on 3 players who've played for Team Italy. Imagine that.
Yeah, Erica Piacastelli being one.
Right, Gina Cicchetti, and also Andrea Filler, who is of Italian descent, who went to Northwestern here. So yeah, Erica is a favorite of mine. She's a ground floor player, a catcher, DH, an outfielder who hits a lot of home runs, is always up high on the leaderboard. So it's just amazing to see that. And they have some pretty good families too. Erica's mom or grandma played, and others such as Aubrey Leach, whose grandma played in the era of a league of their own. She played in the Women's Professional Baseball League back during World War II. So there's a lot of interesting stories and just really solid people.
It's a wonderful experience. Excuse me. Before I let you go, Bruce, tell everybody where they can find out information about your book. Give all your plugs, whatever you need, sir.
Sure, it's called The Franchise, Chicago Cubs, A Curated History. It's available in your bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Barber's bookstores. I'm hoping some good independent bookstores we'd like to visit, and also on Amazon.com. You can order it online, and if you're in the area, you buy, I sign.
Are you doing any more book signings coming up that you know of?
We've got a couple in the works here that we're trying to nail down, including one at Wrigley Field for sometime in July. So more details on that all to come.
Because I've missed the other two. I was scheduled to do other stuff, but I'm definitely, as soon as there's one, you will see me at one, sir. I appreciate it.
Very good. I appreciate the support.
Bruce, before I let you go, I want to take this time though to thank you. I've been a fan of yours and an admirer of your work for a lot of years. And sitting in the press box at AU softball was an amazing experience. It was really a thrill and a pleasure to sit next to you for whatever season that was. I lose track. It was either 2 seasons ago. It was really a pleasure, sir.
Well, the pleasure is mine as well. I'm doing more features rather than game coverage these days, but I do get out there to interview players and so forth. And, maybe I'll see you at a game or 2 this summer.
I'll be out there. Hopefully I'll see you there. Until then, sir, you have a great day. I encourage everybody to check out the book. We'll be putting up the links, and enjoy the summer, sir.
Thanks, John. You too.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.